Okay, so the amplitude is only for sine and cosine. Tangent of theta has no amplitude. And it has no amplitude because it goes like this. So amplitude is how tall it is, but it keeps going, and it keeps getting smaller. So it has no amplitude. It's always positive. And the D, that's our vertical translation, which is up and down. D, yes. Oh, yes, sorry, thank you. And the A and the D affect the Y variable. The A and the D affect the Y variable, right? They're outside the parentheses, and it affects the Y. So we're left with B and C. B is the horizontal stretch or compression, and it's always positive. And the C is the phase shift. And the phase shift is our left or right shift. It's the horizontal shift.
Can you graduate if you are on an upgrade?
What? What did you ask?
Can you graduate if you're not on an upgrade list?
No.
You can graduate.
No, you can't. You can't walk. If you're on the not clear.
Did they hold you back, or you just wouldn't walk?
You just wouldn't walk.
Oh.
They won't send your stuff anywhere. Nothing. Well, for instance, if you're going on anywhere, they ask for a final transcript, and we won't send it, and you won't be able to enroll wherever you go. So you lose. It's a lose. Okay. So B is the horizontal, because you'll make more money than me. That's what I'm laughing at. So it's a horizontal stretch or compression. It's always positive. And C is the phase shift. And what do we know about everything that affects our X variable?
It's a lie.
It's a lie, right? So the B, if it's multiplying, it's really dividing. And if it's a positive phase shift, it's really to the left and not to the right. So then we talked about period. And this is B, not a 6. I don't know. Somebody in my last period thought I was dividing everything by 6. It's a B. So the last thing,
Does it start with if?
Yeah. If A or B is negative, it's a reflection. And if it's a negative A, it's a reflection over the x-axis. And if it's a negative B, it's a reflection over the y. So, in any of these, if the A is negative, okay, boys. Okay, just let me finish and then you can answer, okay? If A or B is negative, the A is the amplitude, and it's always positive, but the negative would mean it's reflected over the x-axis, so it would flip the graph upside down. The B is our horizontal stretch or compression, and we're going to use that to find the period, but if it's negative, you would flip over the y-axis, okay? So it's two separate things. So let's do a problem. So I want to find those four things. Bless you. Bless you. Phase shift. So the amplitude is my A, right? And it's 5. So the vertical translation is D. So this is 4 up. And so the vertical translation, if you want to add, your vertical translation is always going to be your new midline when you graph. So when you graph, the D is always your new midline. And we are going to graph. So next, the period is the old period divided by B. So what's the B in this case? 2. That's the number in front of the x. 2 is the number in front of the x. So am I going to use 360 or 2 pi this time? So 2 pi. So I'm going to take 2 pi divided by 2, and that gives me pi. So the period is pi. So what that means is, instead of the sine function taking all the way out to 2 pi, you shifted it, and now it just finishes at pi, okay? So the last thing I need to know is the phase shift. And so to find the phase shift, this has to be without the 2 inside the parenthesis. So I have to factor out a 2. So I'm going to get 5 times the sine of 2, and it's x minus pi over 2 plus 4. So if it's minus pi over 2, my phase shift, this is a liar, so it's a positive pi over 2. One more. Yeah. So what's the amplitude?
No, it's 4. It's always positive.
It's none because the tangent doesn't have amplitude.
Yeah, you got it.
I know. So the vertical translation is 10 up, because that's your D. Next is the period. And what's the period for tangent? 180. And I'm going to use 180 because it's theta. So the number in front of theta is 5, so it's 180 divided by 5. And I think, is that 36? Okay.
So tangent on 180?
Yes. So I have to factor out the 5. Why do I do nothing with it?
I know because it's tangent, but you're just ignoring it.
Yeah. So the phase shift is going to be what? A positive 20 degrees. Okay, take out your white worksheet that I gave you while you were here.
If it's like the degrees thing, would it be just pi?
What?
When you find the PS or whatever, I'm at the PS period, you know how it's 180 count at 360? If it's the pi one, would it be just pi?
Pi, yeah. Okay, on the white one. So look, on the front, what's the amplitude? So it's 243. So this is a sine function, and it's theta, so I'm going to use what? 360, and I'm going to divide by 15. So 360, whatever that is, divided by 15. What is it? 24? So the period is 24 degrees. And then how do I get the phase shift? I have to factor out the 15. So it's 40 over 15, and that would reduce to 8 over 3. And it's positive because it lies. Yes, because it had the 15 still here. So what about this one right here, the cosine, where the 3 is on the outside? Do I have to divide by 3 again? No. So this one, it already tells you the phase shift is pi over 2. Does that make sense? Okay, on the back. Make sure you crossed out on the bottom, you crossed out the y because that's a typo. So I'm going to do the one on the bottom with the 100 here. So I'm doing the cosine function, right? So I'm going to get y equals 100 is the amplitude, so I have 100 cosine. So my period is 630. So how do I find the period for a cosine function? This is 360, and I got 360 by taking, 630, I got it by taking 360 divided by x, or b, right? I'm looking for my b value. So how do I solve for the x now? Put a 1 and cross multiply. So I end up with 360 divided by 630, right? And I think it's 4/7. Somebody double check me. Okay, so if this is 4/7, and I have theta, and my phase shift is minus 90, so that becomes plus 90. So on this one, when it says 3 pi over 4, this time I'm using pi, right? So that's 2 pi over, I'm going to put x so you don't think it's a 6. I don't want you to do that. So cross multiply and you solve for the x then, right? And that gives you the number that goes in front of theta, always. So I'm going to give you the rest of this period to finish this, and I have one more, and they are both due tomorrow.
One more of these?
Yeah. put it there. Thank you.